No one can stop me from making a new series where I talk about movies I really like every Friday. Not you, not me, not God. Why would you try to stop me? Why wouldn't I do this? It seems like what I was born to do. Why would you try to stop me? Why aren't you doing this right now? I won't be mad if you take my idea. Welcome to Film Rec Friday. No, sorry, Film Rec Friday. This is a new series where on Fridays, I'm gonna recommend a movie. That's literally it. Basically, how this is going to work is the first section, I'll be giving you my endorsement of the film, telling you why I like it, why I think more people should be watching it. I'll give you a list of things it's similar to, other movies, other pieces of art, sort of like, if you like that, you'll like this type of thing. And then I will give a spoiler warning, and I'll go into a little more in-depth discussion about some specific things in the story. I encourage you to watch these videos up until the spoiler point if you haven't seen the film. If you want to watch it, if it sounds interesting to you, you can add it to your watch list. Come back to the video whenever you get around to watching it, or you don't have to do any of that. I don't control you. Throughout this series, I will be doing my absolute best to provide you with a robust selection of film. I'm going to try to keep it geared more towards lesser known projects, foreign, experimental, independent cinema, but I also want to leave the space for more well-known movies that I still feel like could be talked about more often than they are. Which brings me to today's film, UHF. UHF is a 1989 comedy directed by Jay Levy, co-written by Levy and Weird Al Yankovic, who stars as the main character of the film, George Newman. George Newman is an oddball dreamer type who struggles to keep down a job because his elaborate daydreaming keeps him from doing the work effectively. When his uncle wins the deed to this dilapidated old TV station off a gambling match, he gives it to George almost as he's throwing it right in the trash. But when George starts using his overactive imagination to create these insanely fun and wacky TV shows, the station starts to gain a devoted following, and pretty soon they're butting heads with Channel 8, the evil #1 channel in town. Now, this is a fairly well-known and accoladed film. It was produced by Orion. It stars a well-known musician. You can easily find shirts and merch based on the film. You can find plenty of other videos on the film. The reason I picked it for today is because I feel like there's a generational gap in knowledge of this movie. If you're Gen X, I would imagine you've probably heard of this film, but I don't at all know about Gen Z, because I don't see Gen Z discussing Weird Al's UHF, which I think is a shame because this movie is so hysterical, it's so sincere, it's so ambitious, and I loved it when I was a kid, I love it now, but only my parents and my siblings understand the references. And I wish that more kids from my generation knew about Spatula City.
Spatula City!
This is a comedy where you can tell somebody actually sat down and wrote the jokes out, like, beat for beat. I'm not gonna harp for too long on modern cinema because I have as many problems with it as the next person. But when it's the only thing you ever talk about in film discourse, me personally, I start to feel like you might not be watching the right movies, or you're just really jaded. But I will say, especially with comedy nowadays, I feel like there's an over-reliance on hiring funny actors to add comedy into your unfunny script. Like, Jennifer Lawrence is pretty funny in No Hard Feelings, but you know what wasn't funny? The camera wasn't funny. The framing wasn't funny. The editing wasn't funny. The blocking wasn't funny. The situation wasn't even that funny. And at that point, to me, it feels less like a comedy and more like a serious movie where every character is the comedic relief. And you could argue that every character in this movie is comedic relief, but the difference is that this movie has comedy down to its very bones. You could take all the jokes out of No Hard Feelings, you'd still have a movie. You couldn't do that with this movie because while there is a very clear storyline that matters, so much of this movie is just dedicated to like bits from the TV station and extended parodies of iconic films and fake trailers for other films. And this film also has a really well utilized reversal of the comedic relief in the form of Bob, who is the straight man, because this movie understands that if a serious movie needs one funny guy, a funny movie needs one guy to be like, are you all insane right now? I love how purely dedicated this movie is to just making you laugh as much as possible. If one joke doesn't land, you've got another one coming in 5 seconds that's probably gonna get you. And I even notice new jokes every time I watch it. But while this movie's main goal is to make you laugh, that doesn't mean it isn't emotionally effective in other ways. I think Weird Al has always been really good at maintaining a level of depth in his comedy without ever straying from the comedic lens. Like, when I'm listening to Canadian Idiot or Party in the CIA, I'm laughing, sure, but I'm also like, that's actually a pretty good critique of harmful American institutions and ideals, actually. But that door is open because Weird Al left it open and I decided to walk through it. He didn't push me through that door. The same is true with this film. The heart of this film is a desire to make you laugh, but equally at the heart of this film is a celebration of creativity, an emphasis on community building and shared art, and a rejection of corporate greed. Throughout this movie, you will see the ways in which George uses his outlet to help those around him, making TV stars out of janitors and secretaries and camera operators, creating work that he and others are actually happy to continue doing. And you see the reverse of that in the film's villain, R.J. Fletcher, who prioritizes his wealth and his status as that of being above the community. And you see where that gets him. I've loved this movie ever since I was a kid and it came in the mail through Netflix, and I'm so excited for more people to watch it. It's available as of right now on Roku, Tubi, and Pubu. It's on Pubu, Tubu, and Dooku. It's on Dooku. As of right now, it's on Roku, Tubi, and Pluto TV because Weird Al is a sick freak who feeds off of joy and laughter instead of money. I want to mention a few important story beats that I really love. Something I never realized as a kid was that the idol in the opening Raiders of the Lost Ark parody bit is supposed to be an Oscar, and I think that's genius for a number of reasons. It perfectly segues Weird Al's MO from a music setting into a movie setting. This is literally Big Dick Weird Al Yankovic beginning his film by trying to steal an Oscar from another movie. That is some Looney Tunes shit. This also gives the whole intro a purpose within its own parody. It's not just goofing on Indiana Jones for the heck of it. It leads you directly to this image of Weird Al holding an Oscar in his hand, and you're saying like, oh, this guy's coming for cinema now. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I think there's this really beautiful bit of subtle punk rock poetry in the way that Weird Al begins this film by turning Oscar worthiness as a concept into a joke. And he ends the film by giving a specially made trophy to Stanley, the world's greatest janitor and TV star. It's layers to this. When I rewatched this recently, what really stood out to me was the emphasis on the TV station as something that not only provides joy and meaning to the people who work there, but also gives back to the community that supports it. When they do the classic 80s, we have to save the money to buy the insert meaningful third space here, they're not just taking the people's money, they're selling shares of the TV station. And I think it is a genuinely perfect piece of writing when George lifts that deed up in the air and he says, "We did it, the station's ours. We did it, the station's ours." When I was a kid, I thought that was probably the biggest party in the entire world. And it only occurred to me now, rewatching it as an adult, that that giant celebration at the end really only amounts to like maybe 150 people from a small town in the parking lot of this run-down old TV station. And they are screaming and shouting and losing their minds with joy because they care so much about this one thing. And something that I think is significant is that if you actually look around at that crowd at the end, they're not all like freaks and weirdos. They're mostly normal looking people. And I love that. To me that says that U62's sincerity and integrity resonated beyond its niche, whereas Fletcher's greed and apathy ended up leading him to ostracize even his own target fan base. Another piece of writing that I really had to sit with for a second was the sort of karmic revenge that the film gets on Fletcher. In a moment of peak 80s businessman villainy, he gives an unhoused man one single penny, which backfires when the man buys the rest of the shares to the TV station with the money he made from the extremely rare and valuable penny he got. The reason I had to sit with it for a second was because I wasn't sure whether or not the narrative was accidentally punishing Fletcher for doing one thing just slightly left of evil. Obviously, giving the man the penny was ultimately a cruel and sociopathic gesture. But the reality of the gesture was that he raised the capital of a homeless man. And it's not hard to envision his takeaway from that being, well, dang, I'm never giving the homeless a single cent ever again. But what I realized is that, yes, Fletcher, as we know him, is punished because he doesn't get what he wants. But he does get what he needs. He contributes to something good and pure by mere accident. And I think it's really profound that the last we see of Fletcher, he is bursting into tears in the arms of the homeless man. And it is played for humor's sake. The fact that the big, mean 80s businessman gets kicked in the nuts and then cries, it's funny. But what if it's a little more than that? What if he's actually coming to terms with the life he's led and the man he is? Maybe it's a stretch for UHF, but I think it's open to that interpretation. Anyways, I think that's all I've got for now. Go watch UHF if you want. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you have any recommendations for fans of this movie. Yeah. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.